Okay, so back in the 90s, there were these things called adventure games. And adventure games, for those of you who are not aware, were like these super narrative-driven puzzle solvers. You know, you'd go from area to area, picking up items, clues, putting it together MacGyver style, moving the story forward. And these games were pretty popular back in the day for a couple of reasons. One, they were usually really well written. You know, when there's not so much in the way of gameplay, I think developers tend to put a lot of emphasis and effort into the whole story writing aspect of the process. And two, because they were pretty much the only things that computers could play back in the day. And there were some pretty iconic titles in and amongst the roster of these games. You know, you might have heard of Secret of Monkey Island, The Day of the Tentacle, Full Throttle, really influential genre-defining games that pushed the boundaries on what was being done at the time. And all of these iconic titles had one particular thing in common: Tim Schafer. The most succinct statement that I have ever heard made about this man was by Video Game Donkey.
If you're ever playing a video game and the writing doesn't make you want to shoot your own face off, then you're probably playing a Tim Schafer game.
He was just an OG at writing. You know, he was clever, he was witty, he was funny, he was skilled at just creating these believable, well-written narratives and worlds. You know, he had the chops. And in 1998, he created his magnum opus, what I, as well as many other people, consider to be one of the greatest games of all time, Grim Fandango.
Sorry for the wait, Mr. Flores. I am ready to take you now.
This crazy, weird 1940s film noir gangster crime drama set in the Mexican land of the dead underworld. I mean, that's probably the most interesting sentence that's come out of my mouth in this past week. I work an 8-to-5 office job, so that's not saying a ton, but I thought it would be a great topic to talk about. It's a really interesting game, and, you know, maybe it might give you guys something new and beautiful to discover in your life. So let's take a look at it. Grim Fandango is a heavily character-driven game. It's filled to the brim with some of the most interesting and idiosyncratic characters I've ever seen written in fiction, which I think is a really important part when it comes to compelling storytelling. Those connections that you form, especially in a game that is just centered around the dynamics of those interactions, you know, just the talking and deciphering of clues and motives and problem solving and all that, you know, it just makes the characters so much more believable. You really get to know them on another level, and it just flushes out the world so effectively. It's kind of like Red Dead Redemption, you know, everybody has their things they gotta say about that game, good or bad or whatever, but the highlight most people like to point out in regards to that game are the interactions that you have with these group of people that you traverse through the story with, the bonds that you form, you know, this group of individuals you get to know. It's just such a special and astounding thing. And that's Grim Fandango. That's its bread and butter. You know, other than the fantastically designed puzzle solving, the stories of these lives being lived in this weird place that is so odd and unique. It's always made me consider the immersion in this game to be so extra, you know, because the world and the setting is such an out there thing that, you know, to make that believable and relatable and to draw you into it is just insane. And the story is equally as jaw-dropping. You know, it's just got mobsters and murders and revolutionary freedom fighter groups with underwater slave trade operations and hot rod rockabilly demon sidekicks. Every twist and turn in the story is just such a wow kind of moment. But at its heart, it's just a classic archetypal story of some kind. I don't really know which kind, but it sounds cool to say that, so I'm gonna stick with it. It's got greed and betrayal and love, intrigue, mystery, murder, courage, all of it. The hero's journey spanning this odd set pieces in this odd time and place with these odd characters. And I wasn't even necessarily trying to avoid spoilers with that whole description I just gave it, you know? But the story is just so dense and so rich over the entire runtime of this game that for me to summarize it in this video would just be long and arduous, and I don't want to put you through that. Just know that the entire story is on Wikipedia. I am here to be the hype man, okay? I'm like Flavor Flav in this particular situation. And that is my well thought out segue into talking about the music. Big band jazz. Easily one of my most favorite musical vibes. Fallout, Bioshock, Grim Fandango, that old-timey swing. It, more than anything else, just has this ability to put me in another place, you know, in another time of which I'd never existed, but for some reason exists inside of me, and I can't really explain that all too well, but it's just the way I feel about it, you know. And there's a lot of this in the game, mixed with some spicy Mexican flavors, you know. It's just like a tasty little musical burrito. That's a perfect analogy for the music in this game. And you know, I'm not Anthony Fantano, I'm not the Melon, I'm not the greatest at explaining my subjective appreciation or appraisal of this music, but just give it a try, man. Sit in your room, pour yourself a glass of scotch, green screen, a classy background behind you. Either way, you owe it to yourself to listen to this soundtrack because it is just fantastic. And the game is fantastic as well, in case you had not already surmised that that was my opinion on the matter. You know, if I had a helmet that I could just put on your head and transfer the subjective experiences that I have about this game into your consciousness, I would do that. This late night, smoke-filled 1940s back room jazz club with the snaps and the sophistication and the witty remarks and all that kind of stuff. This world, established well enough to make you certain about what you have to do, but given with enough mystery to make you perpetually want to keep digging. Grim Fandango, 17 Canadian pesos on Steam. I highly recommend you pick it up and you give it a go. And above all else, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. You know, if you made it this far, please subscribe to the channel. It helps my ego a lot to see that number go up. And if you have played Grim Fandango before, comment down below to let me know if any of this bullshit that I've been talking about resonates with you. And other than that, glad that you stuck around. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you on the next one. Love ya. Bye-bye.